some questions on it. So maybe I can kind of start. Barry, on the airships, I mean, you talked about the potential uses from a medical perspective, remote communities, as well as from my perspective. What are we seeing, and I know it's still a concept, in other jurisdictions, how are they utilizing this? Because you talked about potentially moving it from food product from Mexico up to Canada as well. Are there some examples of how other jurisdictions would want to use this?
Well, one of the main ones, the English have an airship called the Airlander, and it is a non-rigid airship. They've actually got manufacturing starting now, and their principal market is going to be moving people. And of course, people pay better than freight, so it's a good place for them to start. And so as a tourist device, it would certainly be a great tourist device for us as well. Mayor Spence and I have dreamed for years of the idea of putting a little radio tag in a polar bear and being able to take tourists out in an airship on days to watch the hunting and doing things, whether the environmentalists of the food or not, I don't know. But it would certainly be a fantastic tourism activity, also for watching whales. So I think those kind of recreational tourist things will be some of the first ones going. The freight market, of course, as soon as it's available, people will use it. But as with all things, you need to have that test freight. Most airships today will only lift about 4 or 5 tons.
And most of the airships, and I've had this conversation with you in the past, the first time that I think I was kind of made aware of it, these are pilotless as well.
Well, they can be.
They could be potentially.
And I think they will be ultimately, but they'll start off with that for sure. Again, just back to regulations and non-line of sight operations and so on.
So basically, load to both ends, bringing them up and down. Questions from the audience? Over here. Microphone, I think Volker's walking there around.
Okay, my question is about the EV. And the charging stations suggested about Highway 6. Have you considered the lack of telecommunications in the area with the concern of weather and maybe one of the stations not, breaking because of extreme weather and the inability to call out for help? I travel Highway 6 a lot from northern Manitoba to Winnipeg, and there is probably 4 to 5 hours of my trip where I can't use cell phone. So is there a backup plan on what people would do if they got to a charging station and it was not operative?
Thanks for that question. Yeah, that's why Tesla set their standard quite a few years ago at basically trying to put the stations no farther than about 100 kilometers apart. So if one station, let's say there had been a fire and the power lines were down to that particular station, that you could go on to the next station safely. And really, that's the standard that we follow too, because frankly, around the world in cold weather locations, that seems to be what works. Norway's been a very good pioneer in this, and they basically face the exact same situation in many situations in Norway. Yeah, that 100 kilometer distance seems to work most of all. The other nice part about it is the technology now is at the point where we don't have to rely entirely on the transmission lines being working. Again, I'm going to give credit to Tesla, but I also give credit to ChargePoint, for instance. They've developed battery systems that Kent alluded to that aren't really that expensive, can be installed and can keep the power. And so if the station goes down, in terms of the hydro arriving to it, the station itself doesn't go down because it's got its battery backup power available. And it works very effectively. There was a big challenge that was put out in Australia, and they said it couldn't be done. Tesla walked up, said, of course it can, did it, and it works fantastic. And we may think, well, that doesn't apply to us because that's our own country. Actually, it's a much more difficult challenge in really, really hot climates than it is in our cold climate.
association to fund these. It seems to me $100,000 or even $5 million to make all these happen. Okay, sorry about that. So a cooperative to fund these EV charging stations, and then Dr. Prentice on the how fast do these airships? And larger question is anyone looking at the multimodal aspect of marrying planes and airships and railways and whatnot in overall transportation? Thanks.
Start with Robert.
Oh, okay, just so nobody thinks I paid him to ask me this question.
You did.
Yeah. 2 years ago, Hydro, the president of Hydro and the directors of all divisions of Hydro invited me to talk to them at their annual meeting. And it was one of the things that I gently tried to warn them about. I said, you know, the Hydro Act gives you an exclusive right to sell electricity here in Manitoba, but that doesn't mean you're the only ones who can provide electricity. The opportunity is there for organizations to cooperatively produce the electricity and distribute it to their members, in which case they're not selling it. So yeah, it not only exists, but if Hydro doesn't get on board pretty quickly, it's going to happen. And because the price of generating electricity with solar power is coming down so substantially, and the price of batteries is really coming down, it's becoming a much more an option.
Barry, part two.
Yes, well, the answer to your question about the speed, most people think airships are very slow. And that's because you only see them at the football fields doddering around and going nowhere. They actually flew in the 1930s at 145 kilometers an hour. That was the cruise speed. So we used that to look at this idea of bringing fruits and vegetables from Mexico. It would take 20 hours to get from Mexico to Winnipeg with a load of veggies. So they're actually quite fast. And that was the speed then. We're not sure if that was a top speed because of fuel consumption or just how fast the engines could push them. Again, they were old diesel engines. Today we've got better materials, better engines. We think they'd actually probably run a little faster. With regard to the intermodal connection, there's no question that you always use the best system for the best case. So we're not going to ship goods from Winnipeg all the way to, say, Island Lakes. We bring, even then you bring them to Pine Dock or bring them to Thompson, transload here, and then go in. And of course, it's always the best way to minimize your costs in total, and that's what we would do. So, no, they're just another tool in the toolbox in terms of transportation.
If I could just add to Dr. Prentice's comment in terms of intermodal, you know, the largest supply of iron ore in the world is in Baffinland, right, beside Pond Inlet. And one of the huge struggles that they're having is getting approval to, you know, do rail or road or whatever to get it to port. You can use airship to bring that iron ore to Churchill, and then Churchill train down and take it anywhere in North America. So I think it absolutely could be connected.
Is that part of Gary, just making sure that from a transportation perspective, as well, is making sure that we have an integrated system to be able to move? We talked about rail, we talked about trucks, we talked about ports, we talked about air. It's making sure that we've got an integrated system that all works together.
Yeah, the point is, you know, do we need it, or should we also think about it and have an integrated system? Absolutely. I mean, again, if we're going to have a loading facility here in Thompson for airships, well, the first question is, well, where's the road? You know, you got to get a road to it. If you're going, everything's going to come on a truck, everything's going to leave on a truck, and I call it the Jordan. Everything in this room except you and I was at one time on a truck. So trucks are critical, and we have to see how do we get goods from the truck to the airship to the truck, or the rail car.
You know, the example we gave on the fruits and vegetables make it sound like it's not intermodal, right? It's taking away trucks or taking away rail, but you're going to ship it from a spot, or they're going to truck it into that spot, and then they're going to truck it to, or, you know, airship to Winnipeg, and then we're going to potentially truck or fly from there. So it absolutely would be connected.
Question in the morning.
Good morning. I'm from St. Joseph Point. That's a remote First Nation
here in northern Manitoba. And I love the idea of airships bringing up any goods to alleviate our cost of living, which is really high. But my question would be, would it be okay, or do you see any foreseeable problems bringing down like decades worth of recyclable goods, ELVs, old batteries? Like, is there? I would love to have instead of a 6-week window during the winter road. Like, I would love to have a year-round option to bring all that stuff down to the recycling centers in Winnipeg.
Thank you for the question. It's something we've had thought about and talked about in the north. Further north, it's even worse. If you get to a place like Iqaluit, none of the garbage is ever broken down. It just keeps accumulating, and we have to get it out of there. So to the extent that the airship is coming in with supplies to the community, it's not going to go back empty no matter what. You cannot fly an airship without a load on board. So if you're not bringing out cargo, you have to put on water. So why would we put on water if it was recyclables or even just trash to bring out and dispose of properly? Absolutely, that would be the way it would work.
Other questions? Maybe to Robert. Robert, I know there was also talk about EV today, and I think one of the biggest challenges in the EV sector is just the amount of what I would consider to be, whether it's misinformation or that seems to be out there. You hear about EVs don't work in winter, they're not going to work in Manitoba. You hear about the issues of if we were to go entirely EV in Manitoba, we don't have enough electricity to kind of go in that direction. So is that part of the bigger challenge? Obviously, we've seen an increase in number of EVs. Various levels of government have put incentives in to encourage people, and people are kind of going in that direction. Is there still really a hesitancy from the average citizen, though, just as a result of the amount of what we'll call misinformation or miseducation in regards to the EV industry?
Yeah, they're right, Chuck. There certainly is. I will give Manitobans full credit, though. One of the things that since I stepped down as president of the association, and because I used to be chair of the Manitoba Association of Automobile Clubs, and I have a whole lot of outstanding debts to attend a whole lot of car conventions around the province. I have been doing that the last 2 years, and it's been very interesting. Some folks will expect car guys and gals, gearheads, going to be totally opposed to this. Some of them will probably, and they'll start quoting some of these things they've heard or they've read, but then they're saying to me, is this really true? And, they're doubting the silliness that they're reading and they're hearing many of them. And that's a testament to, I think, the smarts that a lot of Manitobans have got. We used to get angry when we read this stuff, those of us who were in the association. I don't get angry anymore. Now I get entertained by some of it. And I have, certainly, it's taking a lot of time to allay people's fears. Nobody wants to go and spend a chunk of money if it's going to be something that's going to cause them a problem. But really, all of the things that people are reading are basically false. And the idea that there won't be enough energy, I have to be careful who I talk about. Some of our key members are employees of hydro in some very key positions in hydro. And some of them did the analysis years ago and have made sure that they're not promoting something that's going to give the corporation a problem, and it isn't. And one of the other nice factors is that, have I got another half a minute to
You do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the big challenges we've had here in Manitoba for the longest time, and I know that it's why the previous government, to a large extent, was so reticent to do anything or to be seen to be doing anything to promote electric vehicle systems. They were afraid that they're based down in the southwestern part of the province where they've got solid backing, would be upset with them because that's petroleum country down there, as well as farming country. Well, I started pointing out to folks years ago, if you were to take a look at the map of Manitoba and look at the part of the map of Manitoba where petroleum is developed in southwestern Manitoba, and then overlay on that map a map that shows where Manitoba's portion of the Sunbelt is. It's like, as my Lois says, God herself traced the line. It's the exact same part of the province. So as we switch off of petroleum, it's going to be a gentle time to take to do this. It's not going to happen overnight. We're going to be transitioning over to electric generation down there, and solar generation. And so the capacity down the road is going to be there for us to generate our own electricity right here in Manitoba. And there have been umpteen studies that have been done that have shown that that's exactly the case. So even down the road, we're not going to have a problem.
Chuck, can I just add to that about the myths question you had? I sit as the northern representative for Manitoba EV. I live in Thompson. I don't even have an EV because I can't really drive it to anything. That's the problem, right? But you talked about myths, and I'm also the administrator for a Northern EV Facebook page. So if anybody's interested, log on there because we're providing correct information all the time. Electric Energy Canada hosted a webinar Zoom meeting maybe a couple months ago about addressing the 10 most wrong myths in the province. And then we got an EV book. It's a PDF file. So all those are available on, all those are available on the Facebook page. So if you want to address that or share that information with friends, you will begin to see what the real facts are. And somebody who drives a car like Robert, take it for a drive. Don't listen to what somebody else says. You'd be amazed what an EV can do. That's all I'm saying.
And by the way, when we're done, the cars here, I'm quite happy to take folks for a ride. The back seat is down, but that's where the bed is there, but I can take people up one at a time. So Minister, what do
You need to ride to the airport about 7.
Maybe just kind of we wrap up. I know lunch is being sort of brought out, and we've got 5 minutes left. When we started, Gary, you were here yesterday, when we kind of started the session, we had a conversation with the rail industry. And one of the questions I posed to the rail industry was, obviously, continuing changes in the transportation industry. And I'm curious in terms of, you talked a lot, and this is going to be for the entire panel as well, you talked about the challenges over the last number of years as a result of COVID and other things. Where do you see things going? And I'm asking everyone to kind of look forward a little bit, and that's really the intent of what today is looking forward 5 years. Where do you see things going from the aviation perspective? And I'll ask Gary to start, and then we're gonna bring you in this one as well, just because I know you've been able to sit there and the good-looking one on the panel, obviously. So
No, you go ahead.
we'll let Gary go, then we'll have Maggie, then we'll go down the line.
All right, well, obviously, where we'd like to see it go is to see improved technologies to reduce some of our costs. Unfortunately, the costs are increasing, and so what you're going to see is just focus on frequency. Where we could afford to go 10 times a week, you may only be able to go 7 times a week now, and those kind of things, which is not where the industry wants to go because you want more frequency. You kind of get into a catch-22. The less frequency you have, the less convenient it is, so the less there is for travel. So, that's going to be some, what you're going to see is rationalization of the market. You are going to see, focus on cost. I think because of some of those costs going up, it will lead to some of those innovations that you're going to see. So I expect to see further collaboration between the different modes of operation. But there's an increasing demand in the north, so it's not going away.
Maggie.
Well, like everyone else, costs have gone on for us. I'm actually going to tie a little bit of the EV into this. We have a lot of equipment in the airport. It would be good to see some of that become EV equipment. Of course, right now it's incredibly expensive. It's incredibly expensive to run an airline. It's incredibly expensive to run an airport. But yeah, we're looking for the technology to help bring those costs down.
Robert, I'm going to go to you and I'm going to let Gary wrap it up.
Sure. I have a question for Robert. It's the EV guy, like the battery stuff and all that. I was just curious. You talk about cell services leading down the road back and forth. There's one by Monaco. It's got solar panels. It's got solar panels I don't know who installed it, but they installed more of those where the solar panels all across the market. And in the community, I drove about everything was up. We had that spring in our community. Somebody dug up the land. We were out for 4 days. We're looking at it. What happened?
Wasn't me.
But I'm gonna say, like, the battery stuff there, that it would be nice if you see that more also up the north. There's a lot of dead spots, you gotta wait to get to the community and stuff.
I can give him a little bit of good news on that. So the fellow who's probably respected as the world's guru on electric battery development, his name is Jeff Don. Jeff's the fellow, the energy researcher who developed the latest battery that Tesla uses in their cars. And he developed here in Canada, by the way, just so we can be proud of that, or in Nova Scotia. Year and a half, two years ago, I was talking with Jeff about what was coming down the pike. They just put out the new battery, but I wanted to ask, what's next? And are we looking at less expensive battery in a not too distant future? He said it's going to knock your socks off. He said the research that's being done is just amazing, and he said the results that are being shown are really impressive as well. So that combination of much less expensive solar with really improved battery cell technology, and the fact that now we've got companies that are starting to mass produce the batteries, so we get economies of scale that will help to bring the price down. Yeah, it's not going to be long before a lot of those situations are really.
Barry, you've been leading the Transport Institute for
I'm there for
forever.
I'm there for life.
Yeah, I didn't want to tell everyone.
The biggest issue holding back the airship industry has been myth. And one of those great myths is the danger of hydrogen. We all have this notion, at least those of us of a certain age, you've probably seen a video of the burning Hindenburg 25 times. And everybody's scared, oh my goodness, the hydrogen. Well, today we're not worried about hydrogen. But we're talking about hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen-powered buses, trains, they're looking at using it as fuel. And the big change is you cannot detect it. 85 years ago, they didn't know where it was, they just knew it was dangerous. But today, with a handheld device, you can find parts per million. So as long as you ventilate an area, you never have a chance of a fire. And so hydrogen is much safer than people have thought. And one of those myths has been, well, how do we have airships? Because they haven't got enough helium to support them all. Well, we don't need helium. We've got oceans full of hydrogen, and that's what we will be using in the future. So that's going to make a huge difference in both the cost and also the productivity, because hydrogen gives you more lift. It's actually better. So that's what's coming forward. Like any transportation change, and I've studied this for a long time, what you see is there's a very long period of development before you get to the place of commercialization. And it's because of risk and cost and setting up systems. It takes a long time. We don't see a new transportation system very often. In fact, they come along about once every 50 years. You can go back to sailing ships, to steam locomotives, to trucks, to diesel locomotives and airplanes and containers to latest. We're on the verge of a massive change in terms of transportation, and we need it. And when we talk about the north, and the remote communities definitely is a crying need, but we also need a replacement for cargo jets crossing oceans. They produce as much pollution as the shipping industry does, carrying a small fraction of the goods. And we're not going to give up air transport, but we need a cleaner way of doing it. And because of the airship size, they can hold very large containers of hydrogen as fuel and have zero carbon emissions. This is the promise of the future. Once it starts and gets established, it's going to be explosive growth, which is maybe a bad word to use. We'll use that word. But nonetheless, it's going to be very rapid, and indeed, you're all going to see it change. You won't believe what the world will be like 20 years from now, once the airships get established, because many new uses are going to be found.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank our